Hello everyone and welcome to The Concerned Citizen. My name is Matthew, and today's video we are going to discuss listen to a segment that was done on The View on July 23rd about DEI and the reversal upon the executive orders that Trump has done. Now, I have the audio file as I indicated. We're going to pause, listen to it. If you want to hear the entire segment uninterrupted, you can go on to YouTube, Spotify, and listen to the full broadcast. But let's go ahead and get started and start playing.
So one of Trump's first moves after taking the oath was issuing sweeping executive orders to end diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, all in the name of what he calls meritocracy in the workplace. So what do you think of getting rid of these DEI programs? And do you think he knows how to spell DEI?
So I fall somewhere in the middle on this. I generally think organizations are stronger when there's diversity, but I think it needs to be the whole host of diversity. So ideological, socioeconomic diversity, religious, not just race-based.
So I'm going to say this. I personally participate in DEI programs at my company. Who knows how long they will last, but there are many things beyond what Alyssa's talking about that encompass this program. So there are disabled people, there are veterans, there are older individuals, young professionals, and yes, there are groups for LGBTQ people, Black individuals, Native American, Latino, and many others. So I think that there's a lot of misconception. It was funny. I was talking to my mother and she was like, I don't even know what that is. So it's interesting to see like how uneducated or uninformed individuals are about these programs and what the benefit of them are. So they are very easily susceptible to attack and reversal. So what I want to do is just continue, and then I'll comment as I see fit in certain areas and talking points.
Race.
And I think that a lot of Americans generally agree that diversity makes things better. But I also think a lot of this country thinks, I want the federal government to work. I don't know that I think every agency needs 100 or dozens of employees focused on diversity if you can't get your VA benefits, if you feel like our schools are failing and falling behind, if you think it's too hard to get your Social Security benefits. So I think there's somewhere in between that most people fall. And I will say this, something that I've heard from both MAGA types and then like Bernie bros is DEI to some extent is a professional people problem. If you're working class in this country, if you're in the agriculture sector, if you're in the service industry, you don't even get to have a DEI office.
Is that true, really? Because I remember when I was younger, a Black person would...
I think at Walmart, who is, one of the largest employers for individuals who are not high wealth, right, does have a DEI program. And there are initiatives set forth to empower and give equal opportunity to other individuals who otherwise would not have that. I do think that it does matter in some capacity that I do have these programs because, to tell you the truth, I understand as a Hispanic, where I grew up, where I have access to education, the distance, all matters in regards to determining how easy or the probability of me getting a job that pays well and creating wealth for myself. So I think that is a point here that is at times missed. And even though, I worked in certain areas, I cleaned toilets in a factory, I was aware of the inequity and unfair treatment, even those levels. Yes, we were all working in the same place, but guess what? Matthew was the one that was asked to clean the toilet. And I did so because that's how I was raised. Like, no matter what the job is, you do good at it and you do your best. And that's how I see many Hispanics and Latinos, very hardworking people we are. So let's go on and listen.
Have a hard time getting into a union, for example.
Yeah.
That would be blue collar.
So unions do actually tend to have some
I don't
level
know
of
if
DEI.
that's true anymore, but that was true then.
I'm saying in a workplace, this isn't necessarily for a lot of working class Americans. The first issue that they're coming up against is how do I make the workplace more diverse, or do we have a DEI officer? It's am I going to get paid on time? Is my check going to clear? Am I going to get enough hours to make ends meet?
Right.
I think that people can have more than one concern. I think a lot of people are smart to the fact, especially for minorities, of what contributes towards them having access or not having access to the opportunities. I worked for a previous employer where I completely was baffled by the fact that this person who was the most qualified was not hired, right? And this person was black. And I was like, if you're going based on their experience and knowledge, they are definitely the person you're going to take. And they didn't. They hired somebody else who was let go after a month and already knew beforehand that they were going to be let go. So I got to witness that firsthand. Then you had someone else who was a woman, who economic wise did not have money, in the sense that it was reflected, let's say, for them in the way that she dressed, and was very knowledgeable, to be honest, and was not hired, right? Instead, they hired a man instead of her, and it didn't make sense. Now, the explanation for them was because it met certain requirements that they were looking for as far as what their rating scale, but it did not make sense. And again, that was another situation that person did not last and was criticized in front of us. And I felt like they were doing a disservice. I felt bad for him, to be honest, because he went for the opportunity just like everybody else. And again, they ignored the credentials for some reason of these minorities. I don't understand. It was very blatant. Um, they hired people that were like themselves. So there's examples there, but let's continue.
I think this is a really important issue, especially because when we're talking about DEI, we're not talking about a DEI office. We're talking about equal opportunity and inclusion across all offices for all people so that it is more reflective of what America looks like. This will specifically harm women, right? And it will specifically harm African Americans and Latinos. So we're not just talking about black jobs.
How about Asians?
It will affect Asians as well. And so I think this is really counter to his campaign promises to protect black jobs.
The way I see these programs, because I personally had experience with them, is that these programs are there to help elevate and address the inequity. I have never been told to hire somebody just because of they meet a certain demographic. I have never personally been advised that, to be honest. So I think there's lots of misconceptions. A lot of people, the way that we're taught in DEI is that we have the preconceived notion of hiring individuals like ourselves, right? And what we have to do is pay attention to the credentials and experience that the individual's coming with. Just because somebody's disabled doesn't mean they can't do the job because they need an accommodation. Just because somebody's older doesn't mean that they are not experienced and don't have a technological background. I'm going to use this in regards to Hispanics because I am Latino. And sometimes they go, oh, they lack the education, the way they talk, English is not their first language. I personally worked with somebody who has an accent in a previous company, and you got to see how people were very willing to kind of talk over her and tell them that they didn't understand her and kind of discredit her ideas. So this is about re-educating the workforce. A lot of people go, just hire the best person. Yeah, that's what DA is trying to do, but unfortunately, we don't live in a rainbow world. Let's continue.
Because in the federal government, overwhelmingly, black professionals work there. We're talking about over 16%, more than the black population. And so I think what we're facing here is sort of a second nadir, because Woodrow Wilson, back in the day, did the same thing. He resegregated the federal government, leading to a plunge in income for not only black workers, but also for women. And so what we're seeing is an attack, not on necessarily DEI or wokeness. We're seeing an attack on the very fabric of our company, which is opportunity for all, including women. And women, what Whoopi has said often, women were really the they gain the most advantages from affirmative action. And so this is a war on women. I think it's a war on people of color. And what we're going to see is a lot of pain, but especially to those communities that need those jobs.
And also, one community that you didn't mention is the LGBTQ plus.
Absolutely.
Look, one of the things.
I'm going to say this because I worked at a company where a coworker, felt very comfortable telling me that when I had talked to them, they said, "What are you, an FAG?" And I was completely taken back at the time by that, even though I had experienced that in the past before. And I had other people who were rooting for me to go for promotions in that company. I ended up leaving because that experience had really set the tone in regards to, it just put a sour taste in my mouth. And I didn't feel like I was going to be supported. So I think that the visibility of these programs is also very important. It symbolizes that the company is taking an action and not just saying these words, that I actually can see something tangible happening. Now, I'm not saying that these programs are perfect, but at least it's something. And a little bit, we'll get to talk about more of that, but let's continue.
He did. Not only did he revoke a bunch of Biden executive orders, including one that calls for the negotiation of lower drug prices for people on Medicaid and Medicare. That's going to be very painful for Americans. But he also revoked an order, the Equal Opportunity order signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1965. So not only are we now going back 4 years.
He can sue Lyndon Johnson, maybe.
Well, we're not only, he's not taking us back 4 years.
Yeah.
He's taking us back to 1965
Right.
before it was legal for there to be interracial marriage
That's
in
why
this
it's so-
country.
that's why it's so broad.
Look, I would love to think, and I hope that we get.
I think that's important to pay attention to, some of these policies and where they're coming from. Unfortunately, I would love to believe that Republicans and Donald Trump believes I believe in everybody having equality. I don't believe that. I believe there's more nefarious things going on. I believe that people feel wounded because there's the potential, and it appears to be the case, even though it's not factual, that they are losing opportunities. So, but at the same time, they're hiring people who are qualified. So let's continue.
There one day. I would love to think that there is no racism by the people who do hirings in the government and in corporations in America. But that is not the case. I would love to think that there is no homophobia, but that is not the case. And I think that by getting rid of this and doing it in such a bold way on day one, what he is doing is giving a green light to people who are racist, to people who are homophobic, to people who are anti-women and think they should be in the kitchen, and telling them there is no consequence to your racism.
One of the criticisms against DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. All great in theory, but the DEI programs have not accomplished things. They've been a bureaucracy of money suck.
This is what I kind of hate about this argument, because it's very evident, pay attention, that anytime there's a program that helps minorities, they look for examples of, for example, how to tear it down. It's not working. Tear it down. There's never a conversation of how can we make these programs better. I agree that a lot of the introduction was a company trying to save face, right? But I look at them like the Trojan horse going behind and hopefully giving an opportunity in making this program actually do something that benefits marginalized groups who otherwise would not get the opportunity, who unfortunately usually come from backgrounds like myself, who are in communities where you can't go to the most prestigious school. It's too expensive, right? And I think that there's lots of opportunities lost because of how individuals are viewed because of who they are and what they perceive to be their background. Like, hey, you went to not a great school, you're Hispanic, you're lazy. Yeah, I really don't want it. They don't say that part out loud. But one thing I want to say about that is that because I'm a lighter skin Hispanic, I've gotten to see the ugly side of other people being honest with me about their bigotry and racism. And they don't know. Sometimes they even said bad things about Latino people. They said bad things about gay people. They have said terrible things about black people to me. And I've experienced that firsthand. So I know it's there. It's not something that completely be ignored because they feel comfortable. They perceive, even though my last name's Rivera, they perceive that I feel a certain way. And there are lots of Latinos in the Hispanic community who are racist. Just because you're a minority doesn't mean it excludes you from being a bigot or racist. So let's continue.
That have not gotten anywhere. When you say people are threatened, what do you think the removal of DEI is going to do to those people? Because a lot of this is.
I can tell you that because the removal of DEI actually at this point in time.
They're not going to fire people.
They wouldn't fire
the
people
departments of DEI.
Well, they're not only going to
put them on paid leave.
They put
the DEI people.
officers.
But what I'm saying is all the people that work.
But they also stopped this thing. These ridiculous, what are you call them? The executive orders. What they are doing is also eliminating the protections for discrimination in awarding government contracts. And to be clear, that is going to hurt women. That is going to hurt business.
Well, I believe in the spirit of this, which is DEI
has action that supports it.
At University of Michigan, $85 million in a 5-year DEI plan. The Black Student Union said $85 million was spent, and yet Black students' experience on campus has hardly improved, and enrollment has gone down. So that's one example of saying that.
Harvard Law School.
Again, these are examples, and you could find stories. I look at sometimes practices in other companies, and I go, oh, that's not really how we implement it. I could definitely see where there's opportunity for you to improve your program. But that's, again, it's not the conversation. It's not like you look for the example of why this doesn't work. I don't hear Alyssa or Sarah offering anything to actually empower and make these programs better.
It's not just a criticism of diversity. It's a criticism of the programs being effective. And the one thing I will say that is, as we push DEI, that's not what I'm reading. But the point here is that I would also say this all started in colleges and the turning over of affirmative action. I would ask that they immediately address legacy admissions as well. Because if we're talking about the equal opportunity, we need to get rid of legacy admissions.
I do want to underscore one thing, which is this is abolishing existing DEI departments within the federal government. So people who worked in those departments are being put on leave. It is not going back and like, oh, this woman was hired by this officer, so she's losing her job.
I find that kind of questionable because I was reading one of the executive orders, which I hope to do a little bit more in depth. And it talked about investigating the unfair hiring practices that took place. The only way that you actually can do that to reverse it is, especially the way that they would probably do it, is targeting potentially people who were of particular race, ethnic background, disabled, right, minority, marginalized group, and investigating them. Meanwhile, you're not going to do that to the other individuals. So I disagree in regards to Lissa's kind of presumption that this is not going to take away jobs from individuals who are of the umbrella who would be of a concern in these programs. So I disagree with that. So let's continue.
Division has been put on pause as well.
But I'm just saying a distinction.
Yeah, but they are going through a purge department by department. They are finding out, who might be doing. I mean, they've been asking people in the different federal departments to basically snitch on each other.
Yes.
Who's a liberal, who's a Biden supporter, who's into equity,
Yes,
and they have been, purging those people, which they told us they were going to do. What's one of the first things he did?
That's not 1965. That's 1935.
He fired the commandant, the first woman commandant of the Coast Guard. He did that on day one.
Okay.
A woman, not because she was unqualified.
We got to go.
Because he wanted
We'll be right back.
Yeah. So I think that lots of these things about like telling us like, oh, you're going crazy. We care about equality. Don't worry, we do. We believe that everybody, though, deserves equal opportunity. But then when you look statistic-wise, when, for example, a program unintentionally benefits a minority, they're like, how can we roll this back? This is unintentional consequence. It's benefiting those who are impoverished and more specifically Black or Hispanic people. So I disagree. I think that yes, there's things to improve with the program, but whenever a billionaire or like, for example, Trump's plan with economics, right, and investing, saying, hey, we're going to do this so we have a plan. It's going to take multiple years. And I never see them really tear it down, right? It's funny that for people who criticize California and the infrastructure issues and say that led to the mismanagement with the wildfires, at the same time, Trump is going after and stopping and reversing the infrastructure investments that have been made. So, are you for infrastructure or not? I already know you're not. You don't care. So, you want to leave it up to the states to handle their own emergencies and give them the funds. When lots of times the states are so devastated that they need outside support, right? So you see many times where there's resources brought from the outside, like you'll have electricians, firefighters, right, come into that state and the coordination. And you need somebody who's experienced with coordinating between states in order to provide that support. So, again, I think that the DEI discussion is really just feeds into where the MAGA party is in Trump. It's really, unfortunately, attacking, again, marginalized groups who already have so little because it's just fun and good for your own vote to have a villain. And you did it with the Haitian people. You've done it with Black people and Black Lives Matter. You have done it with the Latino and Hispanic community, even though many Hispanics did vote for Trump, which is very disappointing. They're very good at feeding into the fear. So let me know what you think. I think it's highly disappointing. It's basically a sign of where they stand with minorities. It's never about how we can empower and make things better. It's about how we can tear it down and keep things the way that they were, which were those who already were in power, those who were already benefiting, those who were not minorities are going to continue to benefit. And this is also including there are people who are white, who are impoverished and are struggling. They don't care about you either. It's only those who have, they don't care about the have nots. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe. Till next time, stay safe, and thank you for listening.